5 days since the Security Council adopted a resolution demanding an immediate halt to the ongoing siege by the paramilitary rapid support forces of El-Fasher in Sudan's northern Darfur region, there's been no change on the ground, as the conflict with Sudan's armed forces only intensifies.
Swift action, Sudan risks becoming engulfed in more ethnic violence and fragment even further. The risk of a conflict spillover remains high. As the flow of sophisticated weapons continues to fuel the war, all concerned external players should act responsibly and use their leverage over the warring parties to advance peace efforts. Their positive engagement could make a difference to the trajectory of this war and on the magnitude of its human toll.
So informed the Council that the Secretary-General's lead mediator on Sudan, Algeria's former Foreign Minister Ramtane Lamamra, visited the region in May and early June and held discussions with the leadership of both the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, urging them to spare civilians during military operations, while pressing them to agree to a local ceasefire in El-Fasher, where some 800,000 civilians remained at imminent risk. But those engagements have yet to produce a pathway to peace, with dire implications for a country teetering on the brink. With the Council hearing that the level of human suffering in Sudan was intolerable.
Indiscriminate bombings continue to blight the daily lives of millions of people in Darfur, Kordofan, Khartoum, and Jazeera states, killing, injuring, maiming civilians and damaging much of the remaining infrastructure. Conflict-related sexual violence remains rampant. The United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, has received reports of women and girls being raped and subjected to other forms of gender-based violence as they leave their homes in search of a basic commodity, food. According to reports from local women-led organizations, suicide rates among survivors are rising and access to gender-based violence services is shrinking.
While the country's healthcare system had all but collapsed.
The deplorable assault on the Southern Hospital on 8 June, which forced patients and staff to flee for their lives. The hospital was looted and no longer functioning. Its closure will profoundly impact people's access to life-saving medical care. Our colleagues from the World Health Organization note that the Southern Hospital was the only facility with surgical capacity in El-Fasher. The other health facilities in the city that are still functional are now stretched beyond capacity. This is a recent example of the destruction of healthcare in Sudan, where over 80% of hospitals and clinics are now not functioning in some of the worst affected areas.
As UN officials here urge the Council to do everything possible to push for the implementation of its ceasefire resolution and put a stop to this lethal tragedy unfolding even further.
Time for the warring parties to spare the Sudanese people from further suffering and come to the negotiating table to discuss in good faith. We encourage the parties to fully take advantage of the good offices of Personal Envoy Lamamra to promote constructive interactions which could help them take steps towards a horizon of peace. The plight of the Sudanese people demands our urgent attention and decisive action. The warring parties have the responsibilities to fulfill the aspirations of the people of Sudan and make decisions of historic nature and scope. The people of Sudan deserve no less.
Almost 5 million people face emergency levels of food insecurity, while more than 10 million people have been displaced by the war, making Sudan the largest displacement crisis on the planet. Shervin Briceby's SABC News, New York.